To begin our discussion, one of the things Kendi has affirmed for us is that definitions are important to anchor us in principles. Definitions are important to anchor us in principles. So before we talk about anti-racism, let's look at the definition that he offers for racism. Kendi says, racism is a marriage of racist policies and racist ideas that produce and normalize racial inequities. How do you understand this definition, and what do you find to be productive about it? Celia, do you want to lean in? I see you're muted. Unmute, Delia.
Wow. There now? Yes. Somehow it was muted and unmuted by itself, I thought. Thank you, Paul. I was hoping to be the third one, so you got me here by surprise. But that definition of anti-racist, first I like this whole idea of definitions giving you guiding principles, and this is great for the scientific community because we do that a lot in our own research. And when you are teaching, also people that, scientists want to teach and communicate their science, you first define some terms so that everybody is in the same ground. So I think that's pretty useful for us. Being anti-racist as somebody that is really challenging their own racist ideas and doing something about it, identifying it, for me, it's really, really powerful. This whole distinction between, it's not enough to say I'm not racist, because that's kind of not getting into the, let me observe to be if I'm really not racist. It's a powerful definition, this anti-racist definition.
Thank you, Delia. Marion, and then Guppy and Sarah.
Sure. Hi, everybody. Thanks for starting out with the definitions. I mean, for people who haven't read the book, pretty much every chapter of the book starts out with a definition of what, of racism versus anti-racism, and in many different areas. And to me that, structurally in the book, that was very helpful as we went through it to really ground my thinking about that particular chapter. And once we start looking at the definition of racism that Kendi uses, this sort of marriage of I like he's terrific with words, right? And he really clearly thinks about words throughout the book. And thinking about the marriage of policy and ideas, so that it's an intersection between policy and ideas that lead people to a normalization. Like that's, if I could make the definition really small, that's what it would be for me. And thinking about that normalization of racism that's what has been useful to me throughout, is to say, okay, in what ways do I see around me that racism's been normalized? Or in what ways do I see around me that I can look at my life living in the suburbs of Seattle and say, hey, it's really nice here. Oh, interesting. Why is it really nice for me in a very white suburb of Seattle? What policies have created that environment, which is great. And everyone should enjoy such a nice environment. But what's created that has been made it easier for me to travel down that road and harder for someone else from another racial group? And so that, as a beginner, I'm just starting to read Kendi, and as Paul, thank you for the introduction. I don't, none of us, I think here, certainly not me, claim to be an expert. But just having that definition to think about my world has been really helpful.
Yeah, thanks, Marion. I fully agree with you. I think it's really great to have the definition for grounding because the term racism is such an amorphous, ephemeral thing that nobody can really get their hands on it. And so by absolutely defining the edges, it provides a way for us to hold on to something tangible and maybe think about it and how it applies to our life. I mean, I am as guilty as anybody else of the NIMBYism that comes with living in the suburbs and everything else. And the other thing about it is that it gives me hope, right? Like by rooting it in policy, it means that there is something that we can do. And at the very least, for everybody who is here and has not submitted their vote for the primaries yet, the deadline is August 4th. There is something you can do. Vote.
Thank you, Guppy. Sarah?
In thinking about the marriage of the policy and ideas, it makes sense because it seems like the ideas support and affirm the policies, and then the policies support and affirm the ideas. And once a policy has been in place for a while and the environment kind of crystallizes around it, then everybody's like, well, that's the way it is. There's nothing racist about it. So it kind of normalizes it in that way. It just becomes the normal everyday environment, and people don't really take a very good look at it. But by calling out like both the ideas and the policies, I think also you could come at it from a couple different ways. You could come at it from the policy side, try to affect that, and then you could also maybe try to influence the ideas that the people around you have, or try to counter racist ideas when you come into contact with them.